Hey guys, welcome to my legal classes. This is Ganesh Pujari, and in the series of Evidence Act, we were focusing on chapter 2, which is all about relevancy of facts covered between section 5 to 55. In that main series, we were doing a mini series on judgment covering between section 40 to 44, and in these 5 important provisions, we have already covered 3 main provisions, that is section 40, which covers almost the concept of res judicata, 41 covers judgment in rem, and section 42 covers judgment of public nature. Now, in other circumstances, what happens? That's what precisely discussed under section 43, which focuses on judgment, etc., other than those mentioned in section 40, 41, and 42 when relevant. When I say judgment, etc., by now it should be by heart for you also. Judgment, order, and decree. That is what we were discussing in our previous video also, and the same continues here. This is just a 2-slide presentation where I will discuss the bare act provision of section 43, and then we have 6 important illustrations. I'm not missing any of the illustrations because these can be asked as an independent question in many of the competitive exams as well as law exams. That is why I am always keeping or I am giving importance to those illustrations. Not buying any of your time further, let's get into the first slide. Section 43. This particular section discusses about judgment, etc., other than those mentioned in section 40, 41 or 42 when they become relevant. We know section 40 which discusses about res judicata, section 41 which discusses about judgment in rem, section 42 which discusses about judgment of public nature. They are relevant. Now this particular section says other than those, if there are any other judgment, where will they become relevant or when will they become relevant? That's what discussed here. If we see the bare act provision, it says judgments, orders or decrees other than those mentioned in section 40, 41 and 42 are irrelevant. See the word, it is saying irrelevant unless the existence of such judgment, order or decree is a fact in issue or is relevant under some other provision of this act. So any other aspects other than section 40, 41 or 42, if it is a judgment, to become relevant, it needs to be something of fact in issue or it is covered under some other provision of this act. Only in such case, judgments, orders or decrees other than those mentioned in section 40, 41 or 42 will become relevant. That's all covered here. Now we have 6 beautiful illustrations. Let us try understand them one by one. In the first illustration, there is one Mr. C against whom there are 2 cases. Both of them are defamation cases, one by Mr. A, the other one is by Mr. B. Now C fails to justify his statement when the case is running against A, and court asks Mr. C to pay damage to Mr. A. Now just because C failed to justify his statement against A, that particular judgment will not become relevant when there is hearing between the case of Mr. B versus C, because there is a different case and C can justify his statement against B. If he succeeds, then he will win the case, otherwise he will have to pay damage to B. But these are 2 different cases and one judgment will not become relevant to the other case. That's what you need to understand from illustration 1. In the second illustration, there are 3 characters, one Mr. A, the other one Mr. B, and there is one lady by name C. Now the case is A says C is my wife and B has committed adultery with my wife. That is the case. While the hearing was in progress, B says C is not A's wife. That is what B says. But the court doesn't listen to B and it convicts him for adultery. After a few days, C marries another person and there was a case against her on bigamy because A is still alive. But in the court, C says, A is not my husband. I have never ever married him. Now, if that is being proved that Mr. A and Mrs. C are not husband and wife, in that case, whatever judgment was given against B in the previous case becomes irrelevant, because when there is no husband and wife relationship between A and C, there is no question of adultery coming in. That is how the previous judgment becomes irrelevant. I hope that is very clear. In the third illustration, what happens? There is one Mr. A and one Mr. B. A has lost his cow and he says B has stolen it. In the court, A won the case, but however, in the meantime, B has already sold such cow to Mr. C. As between A and C, the judgment against B is irrelevant if there is a case between A and C. That is what we need to understand. In the fourth illustration, what happens? There is a case between A and B related to ownership of a particular land. Now, A won the case. B has a son by name C. Now, C gets very angry that his father B has lost the land, and with that anger, he murders Mr. A. Now, if this particular case comes to the court, in that case, the judgment which was given in the case of A and B will become relevant as a motive for this particular crime. Fifth illustration is very easy, where one Mr. A is charged with theft. If we see his record, he was earlier also being convicted for theft, and his such character or his such history will be relevant as a fact in issue. Now, he will not be directly convicted just because he had history, but such history will also play a very important role. That is what we need to understand from the illustration E. The last illustration, that is illustration F, is again a very easy illustration where there are two people, one Mr. A and one Mr. B. A is accused of the murder of Mr. B. Now, what happens when they check the history? There was earlier one case of defamation which was put by Mr. B against Mr. A, and there A got convicted. Now, this becomes a case of a very clear motive, and such fact is a very important fact in issue where we can refer section 8, which discusses about the motive as a fact in issue. Now, these are the important illustrations which are covered under section 43.
Ah! So many pots! So many colors! Not looking that good. But if I had a chance, I would make them more beautiful.
Nishan, what's happening there?
Nothing, Papa. I'm coming to eat dinner. With that, I'm concluding this session.